Welcome to the Sexy Freedom Media Podcast, a place to discuss pain, passion, and pursuits.
I want to feel alive.
Breathe.
Make some moves.
Protect the throne. This is Sexy Freedom Media Podcast.
Welcome to the Sexy Freedom Media Podcast. It's your girl, Helen Edwards, and
January Liddell, aloha.
thanks for joining in. Today, we have an awesome episode for you. We are going to talk about the subject of vulnerability and how vulnerability is actually really courageous. It's a strength. But before we get started, please subscribe if you haven't already. And if you feel that this has provided any type of value to you, please leave us a review on iTunes or a star review on Spotify and share it with your friends. We appreciate it. What's up, January?
Hey, Helen. I love that we're talking about vulnerability and how it's courageous being vulnerable. I had to look up the word vulnerability. What does it mean? What does it truly mean to be vulnerable? And it's basically to share something or to be your most authentic self. And it's often seen as weakness. However, it is actually a strength to be true to ourselves and to actually showcase who we truly are. So being vulnerable and transparent is not as easy as it sounds. I think a lot of us tend to wear masks because we want people to look at us in such a perfect way. And so to be vulnerable and to let go of who we truly are is amazing. So that's, for me, I had to find out, what is vulnerability? What does that truly mean?
Right. No doubt. Vulnerability, the original version of what the definition is, actually means the quality of being easily hurt or attacked. Also, a state of emotional exposure that comes with a degree of uncertainty. So that makes sense because, like you were just saying, your guard is down. You got to take off the armor. You've got to reveal a part of you that can be hurt, can be attacked. And that's why vulnerability is such a struggle for so many of us.
I was thinking the other day, about how I wear mask. Okay. Not that I wear mask. There are certain areas where I feel that I have a different portrayal of me, right? There's the business side of me. There's the chairwoman side of me. But then I have the mother and the wife side. Obviously, our families see us in our best and in our worst. So when we're talking about vulnerability, I really do think about my family, and I think about how they have seen all of me, all stages of me. And part of that vulnerability is, our fear of really showcasing like who we are, everything about all we are, our insecurities. You mentioned the emotions, and it feels uncomfortable. I know when I'm truly myself around, my family, there are moments or bits and parts of me that I'm like, oh, wow, that is a part of me, and I know that they love me because either way, I'm still here and they love me. So I think that being vulnerable is such an amazing thing because it does open up to who you truly are as a human being, but it is also very scary to do so. Can you think of a time when you were vulnerable? I know you have many, so please share.
Oh, yeah. Definitely have so many. That's a great question. I was actually thinking about that when I thought about this subject. I thought about this subject because I was thinking about fear, actually, and how fear keeps you stuck, and how being vulnerable, again, taking off the armor, showing people who you really are, showing yourself who you really are. So one example of me being vulnerable was the time that, well, when I started writing my book. That's the most vulnerable I've ever been in my life, because not only was it going to be something that I shared, my most intimate parts of my life, my deepest desires, my biggest regrets, my biggest hurt, I was not just showing it to the relationships I was currently in or currently a part of, extended relationships with friends, family, partners, coworkers. It was huge. This book was going to be in the hands of strangers, people all around the world. My book is international. It's been purchased in Australia, New Zealand, the Philippines, just to name a few. So I know that this book it's everywhere, and it's available. It's accessible everywhere where people can actually read my story. So that in itself is just, whoa, you're going to be vulnerable. And I took it a little bit further when I decided not to do a pen name. I decided to use my real name because the whole book was about being raw and real and authentic. And I thought, I'm going to go for it. I'm going to use my real name because that is the cherry on top of this whole entire idea of putting yourself out there and being 100%, not just with everybody who's reading this, but with myself. And that was a huge vulnerability step from me.
Ooh, I like that you said that it was for you. It was for you, that you actually had to showcase who you are for you and not hide it, to anybody. And I love that. I love your book. Your book talks about your journey, and it talks about all the love, the triumph, the mistakes, the fun stuff, the sexy stuff. It talks about everything, the whole gamut, which is the whole human experience, right? At least I know for me, it is a human experience. And I think what I love about your book is that you embraced everything. You embraced all of your imperfections, and you just showcased your true, authentic self, which is hard. It's hard for some people. For
There's
me,
different levels that you take it to, right?
mhm,
There's the baby steps of vulnerability. And then there's, like I said, that extra level. And then can I push that armor off a little bit more, because the armor doesn't fully come off unless you're going through something really, really deep. And that's deep work. Sometimes people hit rock bottom and that's when they take it all off. But yeah, absolutely. January, what about you?
I remember one of our podcasts where we were feeling tired. Do you remember that podcast? And we showed up anyway, feeling very tired. And I think our conversation was about tiredness. and and we showed up, and I remember the transformation from feeling that authentic self of ours of being tired. We even showed it. Like, if you watch that video, that YouTube video, or listen to the podcast, we were talking very slow, very deliberate, very, very, just very tired. And as we progressed throughout that session, our energy just livened up. And I know why. We livened up because we were so true to ourselves. We were true to that very moment of being tired. And there are moments like that where you do feel tired. I remember a time for me when this was when I was a kid, and I was asked, or there was a talent show or some kind of a show, and I really wanted to sing. I wanted to sing, and I'm not a greatest singer, okay? I sing well. I sing well. And so anyway, I go on this show, on this stage, and it's in front of a whole bunch of kids, a whole bunch of students. And I'm young, and I remember having butterflies in my stomach, and I remember thinking, what did I sign up for, and can I get out of this? I was in line waiting to do my dance or my song, and just feeling like I wanted to throw up. And once I did it, I felt so much better, and I felt like I accomplished something that was so fearful for me, something that I felt very timid about, but I wanted to do it. It's that feeling of, I want to do it, I want to do it. And then when you're actually there, you're like, oh crap, what did I just sign up for? And am I really doing this? I'm proud of myself. I did it. And then as you do it over and over again, it gets easier.
And look at you now. You've got, I mean, you've got, what is it? A show? Is it tonight or tomorrow?
It is
Sunday,
tomorrow. It's
tomorrow.
tomorrow. Yeah, and I play Mary.
Look at you. I mean, wow, something you did as a child that you were kind of scared of, and now you're just like, well, I'm going to step into this.
Yes, I'm gonna step into this. I love that. I love that you said that because I think a lot of us have something that we really want to do. And it's really scary for change, right? Just for anything. If you're so comfortable just being who you are at this moment and you're in that comfortable zone where nobody's bothering you, you're doing your own thing, the same mundane things over and over again, but there's this one thing that you're really wanting to do, but you know that if you do this, you are going to expose yourself to the whole world. You're going to expose yourself to your world, whoever is around you. And it can be daunting, it can be intimidating, but to actually step into it, like Helen mentioned, you step into it. That first step, and you just letting go, is that first step to feeling freedom. Hence our title, Sexy Freedom Media Podcast. Everything we talk about here is about feeling free, free to do whatever. And when we're our authentic selves, that is the freedom of who you are. And we were talking about this last week, Helen, about in our 40s, how in our 20s and our 30s, I feel like we were still kind of in our cocoon and we were still transforming. Then in our 40s, we're in the I really don't care. Like, I am who I am. Take me or leave me.
Yes.
And there's wisdom in that. What do you think, Helen?
Well, I love what Brene Brown says. You probably know of her, or heard her name. She's the professor and storyteller who spent 2 decades studying courage, vulnerability, shame, and empathy. She says vulnerability reflects authenticity, truthfulness, and transparency. In addition, it fosters genuineness, trust in relationships, builds resilience, and self confidence. Vulnerability sounds like truth and feels like courage. Truth and courage aren't always comfortable, but they're never weakness.
Hmm. So that brings me to a story. And when this happened, I felt such a relief. There was a conversation Sam and I had, and it was a really hard conversation to have because we had to talk about all the things that annoy us about each other. And I remember having to put everything on the table because he kept asking me, well, and then what else? And what else? And I just let it out. I was like, this and this and this and this and this. And it was hard because I was upset. He was upset. We were both very upset. But I believe that after that conversation, both he and I felt so much more free. And we felt this burden lifted off our chest because we held all of the things that kept us from really being authentic to each other and telling each other what annoys each of us. And that was such a pinnacle moment, I felt, for me, to be able to tell my partner truly exactly everything that was bothering me, that everything that I felt was quote unquote wrong with him, and he was able to tell me what he felt was wrong with me. And that is definitely a courageous thing. I think marriages in general, you know, that that's a really hard, that's probably one of the toughest relationships to be ever in, is a marriage, because we are with each other 24/7, and that person sees us in all of our glory, from the lowest to the highest. And that's a true test of how that person loves you. And I love it. I love that we can be vulnerable with each other. We're going in our 20th year, so we're still learning.
That's
Still learning.
amazing.
Still learning. Yeah.
Well, correct. And vulnerable with friendships. Because yes, you're taking off the mask, you're becoming vulnerable. You do have the ability to get hurt when this happens, hurt by people that you thought you trusted. or that you thought you can confide in, and then you find out they may turn around and scold you or shame you or give their opinion that's probably not the best opinion for that moment. And then you put that armor right back up. But the interesting thing about it is, had you not taken that armor down, had you not been vulnerable, you wouldn't know who you can talk to, who you can't talk to, who you need to be careful in your conversations with, who's gonna stick it out in the end. I've got friends all over, and I've got a circle that's really close, and we've been friends for decades, and that they've lasted because we've been able to be vulnerable with each other through thick and thin. And you and I, January, are a great example of that. We've been doing this podcast for a few years, and it was our relationship became closer and developed more strongly when we started communicating, before the podcast would start and after the podcast ended. And we'd have these real conversations with each other. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, I can confide in January. I feel safe with January. I feel like I can tell January anything. And that brought us so close. Whereas I've had friends for 10 years and I can't feel the same connection with them. I can't get vulnerable with them. I have boundaries I've got to put up right away. I've got myself, I've got to protect my throne, protect my mind, body, and spirit, because we're just not at the same level. It doesn't mean we can't still be friends. We're just not at the same level in our journeys. And then I've got friends who, through my being vulnerable, I've learned we definitely need to part ways and go our separate way. And if we circle back around, that's great. But if not, I've learned that maybe there's the trust is not there. The relationship has ran its course. It's same with partners. And there's that saying that so many single women and men say is, I'm scared to be vulnerable. I'm scared to be hurt. And I remember that was me at one time in my life when I was going through relationship through relationship through relationship. The biggest fear for me was I'm scared to get hurt. Until somebody said, guess what? You're going to get hurt. You're going Hurt is going to happen. That's what happens when you make yourself vulnerable. But allow the hurt to teach you, allow the hurt to manifest and grow into something beautiful, because that's what stretching is. Stretching is it's uncomfortable. It's growth. Growth hurts, but it's so beautiful in the end. Look at, I'm getting married now, so it's like, I'm glad I was vulnerable all those years with so many people and weeded out the weeds, because now I've got the most epic life and the most powerful and empowering and beautiful minded and loving people in my life at this second half of my life.
You made me cry, actually. Just made me cry. Which is part of being vulnerable with each other. We talk about everything and anything, offline and online. And this whole vulnerability is the cornerstone of trust. It's when we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, we invite others to do the same with us. And I think that's what happened between us two, is that we opened up everything. Whatever was going on in our lives, we shared, whatever was going on. And that reciprocity that fosters deep, meaningful, relationships. And it's a like the mutual understanding and acceptance of like who we are as, as people. And it's true, not very many people can do that, because there are people out there that do keep their guard. So if one person is keeping their guard, the other one is vulnerable, it's not going to work. It's not going to work, because that person is being their true self, right? And then this person is not as open, as inviting as the other. Then it's going to be a struggle to grow and to stretch that relationship, because they're keeping themselves in a bubble. And that's the whole, go ahead.
The visual that came to my mind was surface level. It's
Mm.
like when the rain falls down on something hard, it slides right off. But if the rain can get through and feed whatever it needs to be fed, like let's just say a flower, that's the kind of the image I got. If the rain hits a flower that is made out of metal, it's going to just slide right off. But if the rain hits a flower that is rooted down in soil, that's going to help that flower to grow.
I love that image. That is a beautiful image. I hope you got that, because there's a quote that says something about rain and that we need rain in order for us to grow. And that's exactly what you were saying. And that's what happens when we're vulnerable with each other. When you overcome that fear, overcome the fear of, I'm going to get hurt, I'm going to get betrayed, and open it to the what ifs, the what if possibility, positive possibility of growth and beauty in this journey that you'll have with that other person. And I think that's what happens with a lot of people, is that you were mentioning it earlier, that people get so afraid to be in relationships these days because they're afraid of being hurt, or they were hurt, they were betrayed, and they're like, nope, not anymore. So a lot of people are like, I'm just going to keep to myself. But there's this beauty when it comes to all the drama and all the things that happen in our lives. We need the bad. We need the bad parts in order to make us a better person. And I think that's one thing that we should keep in mind, is that when those struggles happen, we need that other person to talk to. We need that other person to grow with, to be with, to experience life with. And I think overcoming that fear is really vital. And I encourage anyone that's out there that is afraid of something. If you're afraid of something, you're like, I really want to do it, but A, B, C, D, E, F, G, let go of the A, B, C, D, E, F, G and open it up to H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, because there's other stuff that could happen too. So that's what I encourage people to do, is just step out of your comfort zone. I'm sure you've heard that a dozen times, but this is just a friendly reminder that you can step out of that comfort zone, be your true authentic self, be that vulnerable self of yours, and blossom into the flower that you were meant to be.
What do you think about vulnerability in business? There's so many entrepreneurs who listen to us. In what way have you felt vulnerable in business or in your entrepreneurship journey?
I remember when I first started, I felt like an imposter. So I had the imposter syndrome, and I had the imposter syndrome because I didn't practice. I didn't practice. It was my first go around, and I didn't talk to people. I was just listening. I was just, in trainings and a fly on the wall. But once I stepped out of it, stepped out of that cell or that phase that I was in, okay? Because everyone has phases, right? So once I stepped out of that phase and I kept on doing work, I kept on talking to people, I kept on talking about the same thing over and over again, then I felt much more confident with what I do and who I am in my career. But yeah, and I think in every beginning stages of business, there's that feeling of imposter. There's that feeling of, I'm not good enough, or why me? I don't think I could do this. I can't be like that person. That person is amazing and they're so on it. But that person was just like me from the beginning when they first started. So it was an eye-opening thing for me to see that and to note that we all came from something. We all came from the very beginning, and we're not going to get to professional or level 10 like that. We got to go to level 1, 2, 3, right? So yes, great question about business. Why, can I ask you why would that come up?
I was just thinking about all the times that I show up at the Wyoming Women's Network. So I live here in Casper, and there's a once a month meeting. And there's some days I don't want to stand up in front of everybody and give a 2-minute spiel of what I am and who I am and what I do. But every time I get myself to go and I stand up there and then I do my spiel and then I sit down, I feel so relieved. And I started thinking, when you show up to be seen, that in itself is vulnerability. That in itself is courage, because I don't just do it showing up in person. I also do it online. I share my life online. I make videos. I do dancing videos. I'm not a professional dancer. And that kind of gets in my head sometimes where I got this urge to put out a video, and then I'll tell myself, no, you're just now you're just jumping all over the place, and you've done that like 30,000 times, and people are going to make fun of you, or and I just get in my head about with criticism, harsh words. But I once heard, when you have that urge, that gut feeling to do something, act on it, because that's the light trying to get out of you. That's the light trying to get out into the world. And I've said this before, light doesn't compete with other light. It actually combines and becomes bigger and brighter. So I choose to usually listen to the urge, the bigger light inside of me that wants to get out and hang out with all the other lights in this world, whether it's in virtual reality or in person. And that's why I keep pushing myself to show up at these meetings and show up, online, and be seen and share my life and share my thoughts. Same with this podcast. I mean, this podcast is a extension of our business, and we share so many things on here, not just about financial well-being and financial services, but also our personal lives. When you share about Sam and I share about Rob, we are being vulnerable in that moment. We are letting our guard down, not just with us personally, but the extension of us, which is our men, your kids, the people we love, right?
Yes, I think that this platform and this space that we're in gives us the opportunity to show ourselves, because it's not just us two that are talking. There's other people that are listening. And that is vulnerable. That is scary. I remember when I first started and I'm like, I have nothing to say. I remember thinking that. I remember, like, what do I need to talk about? What is what conversation piece should I, start spieling? And the more that you and I do this every week, it becomes second nature. It becomes more comfortable because we're just continuing to do it. There was another story. What was the story that I wanted to share? It's about how oh my gosh, I lost my train of thought. But it's the whole idea of practicing, just always constantly practicing and showing up and being there. I know what I wanted to say. So yesterday I joined Toastmasters. Toastmasters. Okay, so I was invited last year to join the Hawaii chapter. I sent in my application last year, but for some reason it didn't go through. And so I got another email the other night saying, hey, we'd like for you to join us. Here's the application. Finally went through, went to my first Toastmasters meeting yesterday. There's a whole bunch of people there. And if you've never been to a Toastmasters, it's basically a space for us to practice public speaking, to practice not having any filler words, to practice our posture. There's a timer, there's a grammarian, there's a word of the day, there's a speaker of the day, table topics, and something else I forgot. And it's very concise within that hour. Everybody is timed. And yesterday I was asked to talk about, this was one of the table topics. If you were to meet a famous person, either dead or alive, and take them to dinner or bring them dinner, who would you have dinner with and what would you be eating? And I had to come up, just say it from whatever, just off the cuff. And it was fun. It was fun. I actually won that yesterday, so I'm very happy I won that. I remember what I was supposed to say. If we don't share what we are doing, or we share who we are, no one will ever know. We can keep that to ourselves and just live life, but nobody will ever know. I posted what I do on my Facebook, and I'm posting quite often. Actually, I'm going to post it again because different people see it. Well, this person said, oh my goodness, I'm so glad you posted this because I had no idea that you can do all of these things. And that to me is being vulnerable, because I'm actually showcasing it to my friends and my family. I could easily say, I don't feel comfortable sharing this with them because I don't want them to think I'm trying to sell them, or I don't want them to think that I'm, a salesperson or whatever thoughts, right, that come into our heads of not sharing what it is that we do. But then I think, but if I don't share this, then that person may need an estate plan. That person may have debt, and I'd like to help them pay off their debt without paying thousands of dollars into a money coach or whatever, right? And we can do tax-free retirement accounts. There's all sorts of things that you and I, Helen, can do. But if we never say it, then that person will never know.
No, I love that. I love that when it comes to business, you talked about the imposter syndrome, and I'm definitely going through that right now with the business. And it's because I let go of a big part of my identity, was letting go of Sexy Freedom LLC. And I felt lost. And I was just like, whoa, why do you feel lost? Everything's going to be okay. You're going to be okay. And then I had to rebuild myself. You're smart. You're funny. Just telling myself all the loving things because, I am my first fan. I'm my biggest fan. I'm my first cheerleader. I say it online, like and love yourself first. So you don't got to worry about anybody else doing it first, or, just shower, be the voice for yourself, and then be the reason for yourself, and then pour into yourself. And then that's going to just overflow into others, right? So vulnerability for me this year has been something that has just really been just impacting my life, like almost daily. But I'm so glad, like I said before, because I do have a circle around me, relationships that I built where I can be vulnerable with certain people who can also, I let them in, like they say, let them in. I let them in. And everybody's like, oh my gosh, I had no idea you're going through that. Because I've always been the strong person. I've been the strong person for years. I had a coaching business at one point. I was coaching others. And now my friends, like January, are helping coach me because I want this. When you want something and you envision it for yourself, it's not always easy to get to, but it's going to be a whole lot sweeter when you do arrive. And I always remind myself, okay, vulnerability is letting people in. It's also allowing myself to use my throat, my throat chakra, and speak up. And it's hard to speak up. Like you were talking about Toastmasters. I love Toastmasters. I've only went one time in my whole entire life, but I really liked it. And I I was at that time when I started doing public speaking in the shelters. I public spoke for 4 years, offering workshops. I had no professional training. I've never got licensed. I never got certified in anything. I just had this desire, again, that urge, the light for the light to be shared. And when I went there and I got up there and I spoke, that was me being vulnerable. But what I tell myself is think of all the people you've touched. Maybe that was the beginning for them, something they've never heard of that would help them start on a journey of self-development or self-improvement or self-love, or maybe get out of a horrible relationship. Like we are the ripple effect. And I would not have been able to do that had I not been vulnerable.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that piece of letting ourselves go and being our true selves and being our that true emotion that we're truly actually feeling is raw. It's it's pain. Sometimes it's painful, sometimes, and it's scary for sure. I remember there's another story, and let me see if I could say it without actually sharing everything about it. And there's a reason why, because I don't want to upset the other person. But there was something that happened, and it didn't feel good at the time. It didn't feel good. Whatever was shared did not feel good. And I remember feeling this like heaviness in my heart about what just happened. And I have learned that if I just kept it to myself or if I started talking to other people about it, yeah, sure, I'll feel a little bit better, but I really needed to go directly to the source. So I needed to go to the source and really explain to her how I was feeling. And I did. I let it go. I shared with her that that particular thing that she said could have been said in a different way. And I did not feel good about it. And I told her that. And it was one of the hardest things for me to do. And that just happened recently. And it was hard for me to do that because I'm so used to being just happy and joyful and all that, and being the light and being positive, and to have this happen to somebody that's um that we're close, we're like family, and she's my extended family, right? She's in my church. And so to have this happen, I'm like, oh man, I hope everything is going to be okay, because I was completely vulnerable to her. I was vulnerable in how I was feeling. And I needed to share that with her instead of it being in the grapevine. So take that breath and said it in the most loving way that I possibly can. And I felt so much better because at least she knows how I feel. And think she cried actually when I said what I said, but that's just a part of growth. Anyway, we had a conversation last night. Everything is good. We're fine. And it wouldn't have happened that way if I were to have kept it to myself, right? And not share exactly how I was feeling. So I'm thankful that through you and I and all of our personal development, personal growth that we've been doing, this is one thing. Being vulnerable and being courageous about it is one thing that we've learned throughout the many years. And it's so vital for growth in any relationship, whether it be business or personal.
Yeah, I'm sure that was really relieving too, that, like a weight off your shoulders from just speculating or assuming what's wrong, what's this, what's that.
And I felt so much better too. It's kind of like when when you have a hangover, when you have a hangover and it's just stuck there and you're like, oh my gosh, I think I need to throw up. And then once you throw up, you're like, I feel so much better. And that's exactly how it feels. It feels just like that, where you feel this sense of relief. So we we have so much more things to learn about being vulnerable, because every day is a battle. Every day we're faced with thousands of choices. And I challenge you, when you're in that moment of, do I step into this or do I hide back into my shell? If you're thinking of even stepping into it and you're trying to retreat, that is the light telling you, go to the light, go to the light, and be your vulnerable self.
Yes, this is why being aware of who you are, what you stand for is so important. And also having the development within yourself to have good relationships with yourself and others, because then you can make the best decision if you need to protect your throne, protect your mind, body, spirit in that moment, or if you need to rise to the occasion and jump, like Brene Brown says, jump in the arena of vulnerability, take off that armor so that way you can grow, so that way you can receive what it is that you need to help you get to the next level, or to keep going, or to get to the other side, as they say.
I like what you said, though. Really, truly know who you are. Be aware of who you are. And Helen and I are at that place where I like being by myself. I like I like having my time where I could just hear my own thoughts and have my own fun, in the car, at home, when nobody's here. I love it. So be aware of you, of what makes you tick, what happens when you're feeling that anxiety, what happens, what is that trigger, what is that thing that is preventing you from moving past or moving forward, what is it? And once you figure that out, and you say it out loud. You're like, that is the obstacle. That is the reason why I cannot move forward. And you put that thing as a different, if you look at it in a different way and you say, you know what? Yes, I'm afraid. Yes, I'm afraid and I'm fearful of showing who my true self is, my true emotions. Yes, I'm feeling really scared, or I'm feeling anxious about this, and what if this happens? What if that happens? But if you can see that in a different way and see that, well, there's actually something much better beyond that. There's something much better. So it's that whole thing. And we've said this before, feel the fear and do it anyway. Feel the fear and do it anyway, because beyond that fear is something so much more better for you, because then you'll be at that next level. And there's so many levels to our lives, right? This is just another level.
Yeah. And if you find yourself feeling a little stuck where you want to be vulnerable, but you don't know how, listen to Sexy Freedom Media Podcast, because every single episode we do, we are showing up and we are being vulnerable. So you are not alone. Believe you me, there are days, like January said, we showed up tired. There are days right before this, I'm like, ooh, I don't know. We have so many bloopers that people don't even see. There's things that have happened that has tried to stop us. There's weeks we went without. I mean, we could have let so many things stop us from our growth, but we continue to step in and shine our light. So this, if there's nobody that it can be an example to you, we're here. We're here for you. We believe in you. You can be vulnerable. You can show up for yourself. You can show up for what you really, truly desire, and keep growing and glowing. All right. It's all about you. You got this.
Please press repeat. Play that over again, because that was amazing. You are beautiful. You are worthy. You are able and capable. You can do this. Just have to believe in yourself.
And on that note, all right, let's wrap this up. January, where can they find you?
You can find me on Facebook, VIP Finance Builders, also on Instagram. You can also add me as a friend, January Liddell. You can add me on LinkedIn, January Liddell. And where can we find you, Helen? Oh, actually, before I say that, I have a book that's coming out, and it's called Alina, the Super Saver. It's a children's book about financial literacy. So we're going to take you on a story, on a journey about this she's a bee. She's a little bee, and it's a story about every little boy and girl that wants to buy something. So I'm excited to share that. Pre-sale should be sometime next week. So please keep an eye on that. You'll have the picture of the cover very soon, so I'm really excited. So it's called Alina, the Super Saver. And Helen, where can we find you?
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. I'm so excited about your book. All right. Well, I'm an author of the book, Nothing Sexier Than Freedom. You can get your copy on Amazon. You can also listen to it on Audible. It's available at Barnes & Noble's online. Yes, I also help with financial services. So click the link if you would like a 10-minute free consultation with me. You'll also get a double. So if you click on it and you want a consultation with me, you'll get it with both me and January. So 2 is better than 1 when it comes to your financial well-being. We're here to help you. And yes, please share this with your friends. Again, thank you so much for listening in. I hear it. Thank you.
Aloha.
Want to hear more?
Visit us at sexyfreedommedia.com.